one without battlefield, record-breaking heat, prolonged drought, and dwelling water supplies are threatening livelihoods, agriculture, and the future of families who have already endured years of conflict. Nearly a decade after some of the worst fighting in northern Iran began to fade, residents who survived conflict are confronting a different kind of crisis. This time, there are no front lines, there are no soldiers advancing through villages. Instead, the threat comes from a changing climate, extreme temperatures, and a growing shortage of water. For communities that spent years trying to rebuild their homes and livelihood after conflict, the environmental crisis is creating another painful chapter. The question is no longer simply how to rebuild what war destroyed. For many families, it is becoming how do we continue living here if the water disappears. When the heat becomes a daily battle, extreme heat can be dangerous anywhere, but its impact becomes particularly severe in communities already struggling with poverty, damaged infrastructure, and limited access to essential service. Northern Iran has experienced increasingly difficulty in environmental conditions with drought and high temperature, placing pressure on rivers, reservoirs, agriculture, and drinking water supply. For ordinary residents, climate change is not an abstract scientific discussion. It can mean waking up and wondering whether water will be available. It can mean watching crops fail. It can mean livestock becoming harder to maintain. And it can mean families spending more money simply to obtain something that was once readily available. Water has always been central to life in Iran. The country's major rivers have supported communities and agriculture for centuries. But changing rainfall patterns, prolonged drought, rising temperatures, water management problems, and reduced flows in some river systems have created increasing pressure. Northern Iran has also faced the consequences of changing residual water conditions. When water levels fall, the event spreads through an entire community. Farmers cannot irrigate their fields properly. Animals struggle to find enough water. Food production suffers, household expenses rises, and people who depend on agriculture can find themselves with fewer ways to earn a living. The water crisis therefore becomes much more than an environment problem. It becomes an economic and social crisis. The timing makes the situation especially painful. Many communities in northern Iran spent years dealing with violence, displacement, and destruction. Families were forced to leave their homes. Businesses were disrupted. Infrastructure was demolished. Some people lost relatives. Others returned after years away and began the difficult process of rebuilding their lives. The hope was that peace would finally allow communities to recover. But rebuilding requires more than security. People need reliable electricity. They need schools and healthcare. They need employment. They need functioning roads and infrastructure. And above all, they need access to basic necessities such as clean water. Without those foundations, recovering becomes much harder. Farmers face an uncertain future. Agriculture is particularly vulnerable to extreme weather. A farmer can work for months preparing land, planting seed and caring for crops, only to watch the harvest disappear because rainfall falls and irrigation water becomes unavailable when rainfall fails. For families, whose income depends heavily on agriculture. One failed season can have serious consequences. Several failed seasons can force people to reconsider whether they can remain in the communities. This is one of the ways climate change can contribute to migration. People do not necessarily leave because they want to abandon their homes. Sometimes they leave because the economic conditions required to remain there have disappeared. Human cause of water scarcity. The effects of water shortage are not distributed equally. Whether households may be able to purchase water, install storage system, or relocate temporarily. Rural families often have fewer options. For them, rising water costs can mean less money available for food, education, or healthcare. Women and children also carry a disproportionate burden in communities where families must spend additional time obtaining water. This is why climate change should not be viewed only through temperatures and rainfall statistics. Behind every statistic are people making difficult decisions about how to survive. The environmental changes facing northern Iran are part of a much wider regional problem. Across the Middle East, countries are expressing increasing pressure from extreme heat, drought, and water scarcity. Climate change intensifying conditions that were already difficult. As temperature rises, water evaporates more quickly. As rainfall becomes less predictable, agriculture becomes harder to plan. As population grows, demand for water increases. And as countries share rivers and water systems, decisions made in one country can affect communities in another. This makes water security both an environmental issue and religious political concern. International attention often focuses on Iran when violence erupts. But when the fighting stops, attention can disappear. Yet, the people who remain must continue living with the consequences, must see the end.